Today we're going to talk a little bit about Season of the Wish, just some broad expectations as well as, what I think the season needs to accomplish, speaking realistically about what we can expect from a season based off the previous 3 years of seasons. This is by no means going to be me making a checklist of it has to have this or it's a failure, as I don't think those are really constructive in any way. But what I will say are, a few things that I think the season does need to maintain to be considered a good season, as well as, there's some specific cases with this season that have not applied to other ones. A few special points that we'll get into right now. So first and foremost, this is potentially the final season that we're ever going to get in Destiny. At least as, what we have come to expect from a season. Seasons typically last 3 months. We kind of understand the content cadence, the weekly release of content, sort of that drip feed model. This is potentially the last one, and the reason I say that is because the final shape is going to be releasing some point early to mid next year, and this season is going to be the one immediately preceding that. So after this season, there will be no more seasons as far as this one. They've switched to, they're planning on switching, I should say, to a model of episodes, which, to be quite honest, appear to be 4-month seasons. So instead of getting 4 a year, we're going to get 3 a year, but Bungie has kind of given us the expectation they're going to be more substantive. They're going to be releasing content within each of those episodes at a more frequent cadence. And, hopefully that's all good. But I digress in that, this is the last season that we're probably going to get, which is going to follow the typical seasonal model we've gotten since Forsaken. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that Season of the Wish is probably in a hard spot because there is the rumor right now that the final shape is going to be delayed until possibly, June of 2024. If that's the case, this season goes from running to November to February, from running to November to June, which is a 6 to 7 month, time frame. And we're going to be expected to get through that 6 to 7 month time frame with content that was expected to hold us over for 3 months. So immediately Season of the Wish, is going to be fighting an uphill battle, as I would assume that decision to, delay the final shape, if it is what Bungie ends up doing, is potentially going to be something that, will have to have their current development team and the team that worked on Season of the Wish maybe spruce up a few things, add some things later on. Or they'll have to release some kind of content pack that hopefully they have, if they plan on doing that, similar to what they did with the 30th anniversary whenever the Witch Queen was delayed. So those are the two things that are special and, not customary when it comes to season launches. This is the last one. After this, we're going to be getting episodes. So maybe Season of the Wish is going to be firing on all cylinders to kind of pay homage to what we've come to expect. Secondarily, this is potentially going to be a season that's going to last us 6 to 7 months instead of the typical 3 months if the next big release, which is an expansion, is delayed. Now, looking at previous seasons, in the Year of Lightfall, I would say, despite the fact that there has been some pretty bad retention numbers, that the seasons have been improving one after the other. And I know whenever Lightfall launched, Joe Blackburn gave some responsiveness and some articles, and he spoke to us about how our feedback over the years for the seasonal model feeling stale, was something that they're going to be taking into consideration, and trying to, iterate some changes onto the seasons. Now, whenever they initially had told us that, this was right before I think Season of the Deep launched. Joe pretty much said that Season of the Deep, they did make some quick changes so that, the upgrading system and the progression system of that season wouldn't be completely the same as previous ones we were expecting. In Season of the Witch, which is ending this week, they completely did away with the upgrade system, and they actually substituted it with a card collection system, which again, I personally believe is a win. It's definitely a mix-up from the model. I will have to say, though, that there wasn't anything really pulling me into that card system. In honesty, going into the activities and using those cards, it wasn't something that I felt that I was engaged with enough at the level that I wished to be engaged with it at. They kind of were an upgrade system or an optional system to these, sort of buffs to your character. And like I said, Bungie's moving in the right direction. They are trying to mix up and add some variety to these seasons, but I think that with Season of the Witch and Season of the Deep, the last two that we've gotten, those two seasons were in development or near completion when Bungie tried to start changing their philosophy on the mix-up of seasons. So I think that they've been moving in the right direction by adding some variety into those. Now, Season of the Wish, I hope, will be really the caveat to that discussion, because I'd say Season of the Wish was probably not either being developed at all, or it was still in the process of being, early pre-production phase whenever Joe came to us and said that, hey, we understand the staleness with Seasons has been felt. Here's what we're doing to fix it. And I hope that Season of the Wish is, fell in that sweet spot where they started to build that season with some of the things they wanted to change, try to freshen up the season. So we might see, multiple systems or, things that are in Season of the Wish that keep player investment there, keep the longevity of that season that we did not get with Deep, and they've been trying to improve on with Witch. So I do hope that the lessons and the things they talked about early after Lightfall are really shown up front in Season of the Wish. And that could come, like I said, in many different forms. If they do some kind of upgrading system that, affects characters in all areas of the game, not just the seasonal mission. There could be some kind of new vendor upgrades and rework systems. I know they came out with a pretty lengthy This Week in Destiny the other day that outlined a lot of system changes, armor changes, exotic changes, ability changes, sandbox stuff, basically. But nothing in there that, is going to be significantly increasing the player investment longevity. Hopefully, maybe there's some things in Season of the Wish that we're going to get that do, bring that to the forefront. Now, I do specifically hope that Season of the Wish, takes some of the roguelike elements that Season of the Deep has been leaning on, and then Season of the Witch brought into play with those card collection systems, or a system where you progress further into an activity, you stay in the activity longer, things become more challenging. Those were both systems that Bungie has been experimenting with in Deep and Season of the Witch, and I do hope that either in Season of the Wish, which is about to come out next week, or maybe in the middle of Season of the Wish, there should be something that's released later on, or even in the final shape. I do hope to see Bungie taking a big step forward with Risk. It is a Risk, and possibly introduce a new game mode, a new core pillar activity, something like that, that really draws from, those roguelike experiences where you start out as a regular character, not much going on. You stay in this activity, stay in this mode for longer and longer. It gets more difficult. You'll get weapons, you'll get stuff as you play in there, and then eventually your run comes to an end. You'll get your rewards and you can rerun it again. Some kind of replayable system that adds that escalating level of difficulty, escalating reward system, similar to what we talked about in the Strike discussion video. I hope that Bungie, does go full force with that. And I think the experiments they've been doing with Season of the Deep, where you could choose, buffs for your character the longer you played, and the card system they added in Witch, I think both of those are experimenting on what they'd like to do if they add some kind of roguelike aspect to Destiny. So maybe we'll see some more experimentation in Season of the Witch. Maybe we'll see some kind of full activity released that takes advantage of their systems. So hopefully we see something like that. I think that would be a really awesome thing to the game to, again, increase that investment, increase that replayability factor of Destiny that I think it's kind of struggled with in recent years. So I think that the retention issue, again, that's been discussed since Lightfall, adding cool new things into the game. I know that as far as Season of the Wish specifically, we should expect to get a new dungeon next week, and that new dungeon, it's up in the air. I'm going to be guessing it's going to be related to the Dreaming City. Dreaming City already has one dungeon in it. It would not be surprised me if there is a secondary dungeon or a sequel dungeon added that kind of continues off the events of the original one, or adds some new story beats into it. I'm really hoping that the dungeon does add some good weapons, some good armor. Dungeons usually also release with an exotic, so I'm hoping that all those fire on the cylinders as far as being good, worth playing the activity going in for that. Another thing that's specific with Season of the Wish is the lore of the Dreaming City and, the curse around the Dreaming City have been around since, Destiny 2 was released. 2018 technically, when Forsaken came out. But, that lore goes deep. That's Taken King lore with Oryx and whatnot. So I really hope that the narrative team and the development team that's put the season together, I personally hope that they pay homage and they pay respect to this storyline that's been told for such a long time. A lot of players jumped in on Destiny and Forsaken. A lot of players came back to Destiny for Forsaken. So, having some really good respect and sort of a send-off, I guess, to this storyline of, the Ahamkara, the last Ahamkara, the Last Wish raid, the Dreaming City. It seems like it's been something that we've been and had for such a long time, and I know why. I know Bungie spent a lot of time building that destination, fleshing that out. So I do hope that this season does have some really good narrative and story aspects as well. I know a lot of players care about that. Me personally, I do love the lore of the game. It's not something I go crazy at every season, but the Dreaming City lore is probably something I will pay attention to because it's been around for such a long time. I'd like to see how it ends, how it concludes. So personal preference is mine is, seeing how that goes. As far as PvP, here's the thing. I don't play PvP that much. What I do play, I do like to see new things. New game modes are interesting to me. I do think that map variety, which is something the community's been asking for a long time, is important. So I believe they are adding one of the maps back that was from the Forsaken era. So a new map for the community coming in a season. That's exciting. If we had a new map or, a remastered map every single season, I think that's what the community would love. But I know that, based on Bungie's philosophies and whatnot, that might not be, what they can expect. Speaking of PvP maps and this point that this season may go on for a lot longer than we're expecting, I know that Joe Blackburn in a previous discussion about Destiny mentioned that there is a strike, or excuse me, I think it is. There is a response team or a strike team for PvP, and I know one of their big goals was getting out a map pack sometime early, I believe, next year. So it's entirely possible that in the middle of Season of the Wish, if the season is extended to the middle of next year for the final shape delay, it's entirely possible that they're going to release that map pack in the middle of the season to give a big PvP refresh with the new maps. It's also possible that they could add some new things, maybe some strike revamps or some new strikes that could also be included in there as well. Or maybe just unvault some of the strikes we've got previously. Something like that with a few extra, weapons and stuff like that would probably be enough to hold the community over till the final shape. And I do think that also everybody here is adult enough to, understand that, we would rather have a good product if it means months of delay versus a product that is suckish and we get ASAP. That's me personally. I think a lot of the community understands that as well. I do find it odd that they have not officially came out and announced it yet. I know that, Jason Schreier broke the news whenever Bungie had the layoffs that the final shape was going to be delayed until June. And, that was something that we learned about in the ending of October, I believe. I believe the ending of October was when that entire event happened. Could be incorrect. It might have been mid-November. But essentially, that all happened. And we've not heard anything about the changes to the release date. Bungie's made some pretty ambiguous statements about, what happened and wishing, the best for everybody, all that kind of stuff that goes with that. But there's not been any official statement about the final shape, its release being changed. They have added a disclaimer, I think, to the final shape page that these dates are subject to change. They're still advertising it for February, except on Twitter. On the Twitter page for Destiny, they did remove the February release date, but they've not replaced it with anything. And I personally tell people that when it comes to the release date, either A, they're not set that they are delaying it, or B, they are set they're delaying it, but they just don't know when. I think those are the two possibilities here. So, yeah, the Season of the Wish, I think, really, it's riding on whether or not, it's kind of riding on what's going to happen after it. If the final shape's going to happen in February, if it's going to happen in April, May, June, that kind of is going to determine, I think how successful this season is, which is unfortunate because I do think that seasons are built for that 3-month life cycle. I think that they do their best when they are, kind of unfold in that headspace. So, taking the work that was done by teams that was meant to last 3 months and expecting it to last, 6 months, doesn't do anybody any favors, but that's also the reality of the situation. So ultimately, I think they need to do whatever they can that's in their power to make the final shape the best expansion we've ever gotten. And if that comes at the cost of extending this season out for a few extra months, I'm down for it. I wish them the best, and I hope that some of the stuff they're putting in is substantive enough to hold us over for the final shape. So again, there's not a whole lot of crazy things I'm expecting. I hope that they continue to work on the roguelike mechanics and systems. They add some really replayable activity that adds some flavor to the game, adds some incentive, some deep incentive to keep running things and keep playing for weeks on end. I've spoken in a previous video about how seasons really in the first week are, get all the new weapons, get all the new armor, which doesn't take a whole lot of investment. And then after that, it's just coming back on Tuesday, play 1 or 2 missions, get a cutscene, and then you're done. I do hope that Bungie possibly took some steps to add some longevity to this season. And if they didn't, then I hope that what the previous seasons have been working on is continuing to be worked on and improved here. And then when the final shape comes out, we get the episode structure. I hope the episode structure adds some of those investment long-term options and, you know, things that I'm looking for as a player. I hope that it adds those as well. Quick video, just kind of what I'm hoping for the final shape. Nothing crazy. It's a season, the last season potentially. So it just needs to take what seasons have done, you know, decently well in the past, turn those up to 11, and, you know, depending on how the ending of the season is going to go, if it's going to be 6 months, 3 months, I think that is going to have an effect on how people perceive the season. What I can say is that the season of the I can't remember what the season was before Witch Queen, but that season also experienced a delay, or experienced an extension, excuse me. And I would regard that season as being pretty good as far as the weapons and the activities. That was also whenever they released the 30th anniversary, though, so keep in mind that season was delayed a few months, or season was extended a few months, but they had a huge, you know, content drop in the middle of it. If Season of the Wish goes for 6 months and does not have a big content drop in the middle of it, then I think it may not have high hopes of being regarded as a positive season, but that's not at the fault of it. That's at the fault of the reality of things. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for. You know, I'm interested to see what you're hoping for. If you have read anything or seen anything that hints towards it, obviously it's going to be focused on the Dreaming City, the Ahamkara, the events immediately after Season of the Witch. But if there's anything else that you can think of as important, it's valuable to you to see from this season, do you consider it successful if this happens? If this happens, do you not consider it successful if it's missing this or missing that? Let me know what you think. Talk to you all soon.